Hi, my name is Corrie, and I'm reading to you from Corrie ten Boom's book, The Hiding Place. We are in chapter 8, and we have started with that already. So this is the second part of chapter 8, 8b. And the heading of this chapter was Storm Clouds Gather. We were sitting around the supper table after curfew one night, 3 ten Booms, the 7 permanent guests, and 2 Jews from whom we were seeking homes, when the shop doorbell chimed. A customer after closing? And one bold enough to stand on the Barteljorestraat after curfew? Taking the keys from my pocket, I hurried down the hall, unlocked the workshop door, and felt my way through the dark store. At the front door, I listened a moment. "Who's there?" I called. "Do you remember me?" A man's voice speaking German. "Who is it?" I asked in the same language. "An old friend, come for a visit. Open the door." I fumbled with the lock and drew the door gingerly back. It was a German soldier in uniform. Before I could reach the alarm button behind the door, he had pushed his way inside. Then he took off his hat, and in the October twilight I recognized the young German watchmaker whom father had discharged 4 years ago. "Otto!" I cried. "Captain Altschuler," he corrected me. "Our positions are slightly reversed, Miss ten Boom, are they not?" I glanced at his insignia. He was not a captain or anything close to it, but I said nothing. He looked around the shop. "Same stuffy little place," he said. He reached for the wall switch, but I put my hand over it. "No, we don't have blackout shades in the shop." "Well, let's go upstairs where we can talk over old times. That old clock cleaner still around?" "Christophel's. He died in the fuel shortage last winter." Otto shrugged. "Good riddance, then. What about the pious old Bible reader?" I was edging my way to the sales counter where another bell was located. "Father is very well, thank you." "Well, aren't you going to invite me up to pay my respects?" Why was he so eager to go upstairs? Had the wretched little fellow just came to gloat, or did he suspect something? My finger found the button. "What was that?" Otto whirled around suspiciously. "What was what?" "That sound. I heard a kind of a buzzing." I didn't hear anything, but Otto started back through the workshop. "Wait!" I shouted. "Let me get the front door locked, and I'll go up with you. I want to see how long it takes them to recognize you." I dawdled at the door as long as I dared. Definitely his suspicions were aroused. Then I followed him through the rear door into the hall. Not a sound from the dining room or the stairs. I dashed past him up the steps and rapped the door. "Father! Betsy! I cried in what I hope was a playful voice. I'll give you 3. No, 6 guesses. Who's standing here? No guessing times. Otto reached past me and flung open the door. Father and Betsy looked up from their meal. The table was set for 3, my unfinished plate on the other side. It was so perfect that even I, who had just seen 12 people eating here, could scarcely believe this was anything but an innocent old man dining with his daughters. The Alpina sign stood on the sideboard. They had remembered everything. Uninvited, Otto pulled a chair. Well, he crowned, things happened just like I said, didn't they? So it would seem, said Father mildly. Betsy, I said, give Captain Altschuler some tea. Otto took a sip of the brew Betsy poured him and glared around at the table at us. Where did you get real tea? No one else in Holland have tea. How stupid of me. The tea had come from Pickwick. If you must know, I said, it comes from a German officer. But you mustn't ask any further questions. I tried to imply clandestine dealings with a high occupation official. Otto lingered another 15 minutes, and then, feeling perhaps that he had underlined his victory sufficiently, sauntered out into the empty streets. It was only after another half hour that we dared give the all clear to 9 cramped and shaky people. The second week in October, during a particularly hectic morning with underground problems, the secret telephone rang downstairs in the hall. I hurried down to pick it up. Only Father, Betsy, or I ever answered it. Well, said a voice, aren't you coming to pick me up? It was Nolly. Nolly! When? How? Where are you? At the train station in Amsterdam. Only I have no money for the train fare. Stay right there, stay right there. Oh, Nolly, we are coming. I biked to Bossenhoefenstraat, and then with Flip and the children who happened to be at home, hurried to the Haarlem station. We saw Nolly even before our train came to a stop in Amsterdam, her bright blue sweater like a patch of blue sky in a big dark shed. 7 weeks in prison had left her pallet-faced, but as radiantly Nolly as ever. A prison doctor, she said, had pronounced her low blood pressure a serious condition, one that might leave her permanently disabled, and her 6 children a burden to society. Her face wrinkled in puzzlement as she said it. Christmas 1943 was approaching. The light snow that had fallen was the only festive quality of the season. Every family, it seemed, had someone in jail, in a work camp, or in hiding. For once the religious side of the holidays was uppermost in every mind. At the Biji, we had not only Christmas to celebrate, but also Hanukkah, the Jewish festival of lights. Betsy found a Hanukkah candle stand among the treasures stored with us behind the dining room cupboard and set it up on the upright piano. Each night We lighted one more candle as Eusy read the story of the Maccabees. Then we would sing haunting, melancholy desert music. We were all very Jewish those evenings. About the 5th night of the festival, as we gathered round the piano, the doorbell in the alley rang. I opened it to find Mrs. Beekes, wife of the optician next door, standing in the snow. Mrs. Beekes was as sound and placid as her husband was thin and worried. But tonight her plump face was twisted with anxiety. "Do you think," she whispered, "your Jews could sing a little bit more softly? We can hear them right through the walls. And well, there are all kinds of people in the street." Back in Tante Janse's rooms, we considered this news in consternation. If the Beekes family knew all about our affairs, how many other people in Haarlem did too? It wasn't long before we discovered that one who did was the chief of police himself. One dark January morning, when it was trying to snow again, tours burst into the underground headquarters in Tante Janse's rear room, clutching a letter in her hand. The envelope bore the seal of the Haarlem police. I tore it open. Inside, on the police chief's stationery, was a handwritten note. I read it silently and then aloud. "You will come to my office this afternoon at 3 o'clock. For 20 minutes we tried to analyze that note. Some felt it was not a prelude to arrest. Why would the police give you a chance to escape? Still, it was safest to prepare for search and imprisonment. Workers slipped out of the house one at a time. Boarders emptied waste baskets and picked up scraps of sewing in preparation for a quick flight to the secret room. I burned incriminating papers in the long empty coal hearth in the dining room. The cat caught the tension in the air and sulked beneath the sideboard. Then I took a bath, perhaps the last for months, and packed a prison bag according to what Nolly and others had learned. A Bible, a pencil, needle and thread, soap, or what we called soap these days, toothbrush and comb. I dressed in my warmest clothes with several sets of underwear and a second sweater beneath the top one. Just before 3, I hugged Father and Betsy tight and walked through the grey slush to the Smerestraat. The policeman on duty was an old acquaintance. He looked at the letter, then at me with a curious expression. "This way," he said. He knocked at the door marked "Chief." The man who sat behind the desk had red-grey hair combed forward over a bald spot. A radio was playing. The chief reached over and twisted the volume knob. Not down, but up. "Mr. Boom," he said. "Welcome. How do you do, sir?" The chief had left his desk to shut the door behind me. "Do sit down," he said. "I know all about you, you know, about your work." The watchmaker, you mean?" You're probably thinking more about my father's work than my own. The chief smiled. No, I mean your other work. Ah, then you're referring to my work with retarded children. Yes, let me tell you all about it. No, Mr. Boom, the chief lowered his voice. I am not talking about your work with retarded children. I'm talking about still another work. And I want you to know that some of us here are in sympathy. The chief was smiling broadly now. Tentatively, I smiled back. Now, Mr. Mboom, he went on, I have a request. The chief sat down on the edge of his desk and looked at me steadily. He dropped his voice until it was just audible. He was, he said, working with the underground himself. But an informer in the police department was leaking information to the Gestapo. There's no way for us to deal with this man but to kill him. A shudder went through my spine. What alternative do we have? The chief went on in a whisper. We can't arrest him. There are no prisons except those controlled by the Germans. But if he remains at large, many others will die. That is why I wondered, Mr. Boom, if in your work you might know of someone who could kill him? Yes. I leaned back. Was this all a trap to trick me into admitting the existence of the group, into naming names? Sir, I said at last, seeing the chief's eyes flicker impatiently, I have always believed that it was my role to save life, not destroy it. I understand your dilemma, however, and I have a suggestion. Are you a praying man? Aren't we all these days? Then let us pray together now that God will reach the heart of this man so that he does not continue to betray his countrymen. There was a long pause. Then the chief nodded. That I would very much like to do. And so, there in the heart of the police station, with the radio blaring out the latest news of the German advance, we prayed. We prayed that this Dutchman would come to realize his worth in the sight of God and the worth of every other human being on earth. At the end of the prayer, the chief stood up. Thank you, Mr. Boom. He shook my hand. Thank you again. I know now that it was wrong to ask you. Still clutching my prison bag, I walked through the foyer and around the corner to the BG. Upstairs, people crowded around wanting to know everything. But I did not tell them. Not everything. I did not want Father and Betsy to know that we had been asked to kill. It would have been an unnecessary burden for them to bear. The episode with the chief of police should have been encouraging. Apparently, we had friends in high places. As a matter of fact, The news had the opposite effect upon us. Here was one more illustration of how our secret was no secret at all. All of Haarlem seemed to know what we were up to. We knew we should stop the work, but how could we? Who would keep open the network of supplies and information on which the safety of hundreds depended? If a hideaway had to be abandoned, as happened all the time, who would coordinate the move to another address? We had to go on, but we knew that disaster could not be long in coming. As a matter of fact, it came first to Job, the 17-year-old apprentice who had sought a safe home at the Beji. Late one afternoon, near the end of January 1944, Rolf stepped stealthily into the workshop. He glanced at Job. I nodded. Job was party to everything that went on in the house. There's an underground home in Ede that is going to be raided this evening. Do you have anyone who can go? But I did not. Not a single courier or escort person was at the BG this late in the day. I'll go, Job said. I opened my mouth to protest that he was inexperienced and liable to the factory transport himself if stopped on the street. Then I thought of the unsuspecting people at Edie. We had a wardrobe of girl scarves and dresses upstairs. Then quickly, boy, Rolf said. You must leave immediately. He gave Job the details and hurried away. In a few moments, Job reappeared, making a very pretty brunette in long coat and kerchief, a fur muff hiding his hands. Did the lad have some kind of premonition? To my astonishment, he turned at the door and kissed me. Oh, Job was supposed to be back at 7 p.m. Job was supposed to be back by 7 p.m. curfew. 7 came and went. Perhaps he had been delayed and would return in the morning. We did have a visitor early the next day, but it was not Job. I knew the minute Rolf stepped through the door that bad news was weighing him down. It's Job, isn't it? Yes. What happened? Rolf had learned the story from the sergeant at the night desk. When Job got to the address in Edie, the Gestapo was already there. Job had rung the bell. The door opened. Pretending to be the owner of the house, the SD man had invited Job in. And Corrie, Rolf said, we must face it. The Gestapo will get information out of Job. They have already taken him to Amsterdam. How long will he be able to hold his tongue? Once again, we considered stopping the work. Once again, we discovered we could not. That night, Father and Betsy and I prayed long after the others had gone to bed. We knew that in spite of daily mounting risks, we had no choice but to move forward. This was evil's hour. We could not run away from it. Perhaps only when human effort had done its best and failed, would God's power alone be free to work. That was the end of chapter 8. Next time, chapter 9, the raid. Good night.